Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Continuing my interview experience, I'll be talking about the technical round in this particular video. I made the part one of the part one, that is the HR round. I have put the link in the description box. You can watch it before watching this particular video. So yes, coming straight to the topic. So my HR round lasted for 25 minutes, while the technical round lasted for an hour. So these are the questions that I can recollect from my interview, and I have made a list of it. I'll be briefly discussing each question. So I'll start right away. So the first question was, give me a brief about your educational and family background. So I talked about my schooling, college, CA studies, and my family background. The follow-up question to this was, why don't you join your father's business? I mentioned that my father runs a business. So I said that ever since I was a kid, I tried to understand what exactly my father was doing. How does he work? How does he interact with people? And that is where my interest in business is developed. But it's not something that I think that forms a part of my long-term career vision. I want to work at a financial institution, so I'm not joining my father's business. Instead, I'm looking for opportunities in the financial services sector. Now, my resume, it stated that I am deeply passionate about finance, and that was the first paragraph of my interview, first paragraph of my resume, the summary part. So he told me that finance is a very wide field. What exactly do you like in finance? So I said that I love to understand businesses, try to analyze different ratios, try to find the reason behind what exactly is happening, and why is it happening uh, in the economy. How is the global economy shaping up? What kind of different policies are being made by the regulators? So this is specifically what I like in this particular field. So the next question was, how did you develop this interest, and since when do you like finance? So I said that during my CA inter days, I loved the subject financial management. It talks about everything. I would say it covers a lot of things about finance, and it's a great subject. I loved it. My teacher was really good, and he conducted a very interactive class. His name was Vikas Bhanushali sir, and it was a great experience for me. I obviously didn't mention the name in the interview, but I'm just sharing it with you all. And uh, so the next questions, they started asking me about different technical terms. The questions that I've mentioned over here are not exactly in order. I have tried to keep it in order as much as possible, but it might be a question here or there. So the first question, what is tax shield? Now, I was not 100% sure about this particular question, so I was honest and I said that I'm not sure about the answer. The next question was, what is bond duration? So I mentioned what exactly bond duration is, uh, how does it denote the risk of a particular bond. Then he asked me whether a low duration bond or a high duration bond is better. So I said that it depends on the situation that we are talking about. A high duration bond has more potential, but it's more risky. A low duration bond is less risky. However, the returns too are lower. Now, the next question was, would you invest in a highly leveraged company? So I said that it depends on the kind of company that you are talking about. Now, a leveraged financial institution like a bank, it succeeds based on the liability franchise that it has created. So I need to be more aware about the kind of company that you're talking about. So he said that, let's say it's a highly leveraged manufacturing company. So I said that I'll have to look at the growth of the company, the cash flows, whether they are comfortably able to cover the principal and interest repayments, or whether they are going to struggle. If the risk is higher, uh, I would not want to invest or give a loan to such a company, because uh, it just doesn't fall in the criteria that I look for in a company before investing. So he looked at my interest in equities, I had mentioned during one of the questions that I have been investing since I was 18, and I love to analyze equities. So he asked me, how does an equity analyst and credit analyst differ, and how differently do they look at companies? So I said that first and foremost, the primary difference is that an equity analyst looks to invest equity funds, while a credit analyst is looking to lend funds. So that is the basic difference. And an equity analyst is, I would say, a person who is willing to take more risk if there are growth opportunities, if there is higher potential. While a credit analyst wants stability in the company, he wants cash flows. He's fine if the potential of the company is not that high, but he wants the company to be a safer bet, because a lender does not make as much money as an equity investor, because the amount of risk that he can take is less, and as a result he's fine with lower returns, but he doesn't want to take unnecessary risk. Now, the follow-up question to this was, so you are telling me that highly leveraged companies are not a good investment target in general if they are over leveraged. Then why do you think leveraged companies like, let's say, Adani or Reliance were rising so much recently? So I said that since COVID, the interest rates have been quite low, and a company that is able to borrow funds at a very low rate of interest and is able to earn a very high return on equity from those funds is creating value for the shareholders. The risk, I would say, it is okay to take risks when the environment is good, the interest rates are low, and if let's say the company is raising equity funds instead of debt funds, then they are unnecessarily diluting the equity shareholders when they could actually be taking advantage of the economy and the macro scenario. So if a management is raising funds despite having adequate cash during such a scenario, then it shows that they are aware about the economic developments and they are actually maximizing the value of the shareholders. So the next question was, if you say that taking debt with when it has lower interest rates is good, then why did the highly leveraged companies fall during the COVID period? So I said that it had more to do with pure business sense. It had more to do with psychology rather than pure investment or pure business sense, because back then most of us were thinking in a negative way. We felt that, will the company see another day, whether it's going to be bankrupt, and all in all the environment was not suitable for us to think rationally. So people were afraid and they were selling stocks like Reliance. It fell to a very low level because of the high debt that it had taken. But eventually people realized that uh, the situation is not as bad as they were thinking. And today, in hindsight, if we look at it, no one would think that a company like Reliance, a mammoth like Reliance, would go bankrupt and go out of business. So that was it with that particular question. So the next question he asked me was, you seem to be quite interested in equity research. Why not join equity research? Uh, why are you joining a bank in a credit role? So I said that I don't think a credit analyst and an equity analyst are that different. Both of them have to study businesses. They have to understand financials. So that particular part is the same. And when it comes to equities, the pool of companies that are available is huge, and you just cannot track every sector. So eventually, I would be made to specialize in a particular sector, and that would be my focus area for years to come. And I don't want to restrict my scope so much, and I just feel that banking as an institution has a much wider scope, and I could do a lot more by joining the credit analyst profile. So he also asked me if I had to choose one out of cash flow, balance sheet, and P&L, what would be my choice? My answer straight away was cash flow, because it not only gives me information about the kind of expenses, the revenue structure of the company, but it also gives me an idea whether the management is investing, they are doing capex, or whether they are staying stagnant, they don't see any growth opportunities, whether they are infusing funds into the company, whether they are taking funds out of the business in the form of dividends. It would give me a much wider look at the entire thing. The P&L, yes, it does have revenue and expense breakup, but I would not be able to decipher the capital expenditure, the dividends, the funds invested. And when it comes to the balance sheet, it has its own limitations. I would be able to know about the profit figure for the year, but I won't be able to know about the revenue and expenses. And I just feel that cash flow is a lot more dynamic when it comes to financial statements, and that would be my choice. So another question that he asked me was, why not start a startup? Why are you joining a bank? So I said that I feel a person who individually starts a startup has limitation of resources, and if I was working at a much larger organization, I would be having a uh, much wider access to resources. I would be backed financially, as well as I would be having uh, people who would be helping me out. I would be able to reach a much larger audience, and the overall impact would be much higher if I am at a bigger organization. I gave an example of a tech engineer starting a startup, or him working at Google and uh, coming up with an idea over there and actually making it a reality. And then I related it to me getting a fintech idea and me trying to realize that particular vision with the bank I'm working for. So I made sure that whenever I answered a question, I backed it up with an example or something that could be relatable to me. So it would look like a more personalized answer. And later he asked me to rank work-life balance, long-term career, money, position in the organization, uh, in the order of my preference. So the first one was long-term career, as I felt that I'm laying the foundation of my career, and it's important that I look at the bigger picture. The second one was position in the organization, as higher the position, the wider your reach, the and you would be able to access a much bigger and a much larger subsection of the organization. The third one was money, for obvious reasons, and the fourth one was work life balance. I said that I am in the initial stages of my career, and I don't mind compromising my personal life for a few years, if it means that it's good for my organization and my career as well. In the long run, obviously, I would want work life balance, but right now it's not something that I'm looking forward to. Then he asked me to be frank, and told me finance is all about money. Why are you putting money as your third priority? I gave a few examples about people I look up to and how they are successful now because of how they didn't prioritize money at the initial stage of their careers. They started off their own businesses, and now they are quite successful. So in the short run, I'm not looking at money as my main motivation, but in the long run, obviously, money is important. Then he asked me, banking is I would say, 1,000 or 2,000 year old organization, and it's an industry that is not evolving much. Won't you get bored at such an industry? Don't you want a more dynamic industry to work at? So I said that I gave the example of my YouTube channel that I've been making videos for almost 2 years, and the growth hasn't been that fast, but I am okay with it. My main motivation was to create the content that I am creating, and I was not looking at the results that much. So I feel that I'm okay with growth, but as long as I'm okay with slow growth, as long as the industry is evolving, there are changes, I'm happy with it. I'm not the kind of person who wants growth immediately. I'm fine with uh, evolving gradually with my organization. And I also gave an example that 15 years back, people were skeptical about using net banking. They were worried about viruses entering their devices, but now everyone is using UPI, net banking. So the industry is evolving. Although it's at a slower rate, it's definitely changing, and it's going to be a lot more dynamic in the future. Then he asked me, why did you choose Mumbai as your center? Why not some other metro city like Delhi or Calcutta? So I said that we just had one choice at the big centers. So Mumbai was the obvious one for me because of better opportunities, and that is where I live. Then he asked me an interesting case study question. He asked me, how many people in Mumbai watch news? Now, this particular question, it doesn't require an accurate answer. It's more about my thought process. So I I would briefly say what I spoke. So I asked that I would need 4 types of data for this thing. The first one would be population. Then I would need the literacy data. I would need the television penetration and the number of internet users in Mumbai. This way, I would be able to know how many people live in Mumbai, how many people have access to news, and how many of them are literate, so that I could come at a figure that could approximate the number of news watchers in Mumbai. However, if I had more data and I had a bigger team, then I would be able to give a much more accurate answer. But that's what I would do with the limited amount of time that I have. So it's more about how you are thinking, what kind of assumptions do you make. And after that, he talked about my future growth, relationship roles, whether I would be okay with working in a sales role where I would be given targets, profile changes, etc. So he wanted to test whether I am giving an answer that differs from my initial answers, where I spoke that I was really looking forward to work as a credit analyst. He told me that whether you will be okay with working in different profiles at the bank. The bank is a much larger institution. You would be coming across a lot more opportunities. So are you okay with changing your career path? So I said that there are a lot more knowledgeable people working at the bank than I am. And just like a teacher who has a vision for his or her student, uh, a student might have something in his or her mind, but a teacher has a completely different vision, and a teacher is a much more knowledgeable person. So in the same way, if someone suggests me to move to a different department where he could see me growing much better and providing much more value to the organization, I would listen to him or her, and I would try to uh, consider their thought process, the rationale behind their suggestion, and take an appropriate decision after taking their consultation. And the last part of the interview, where they asked me, uh, "Do do you have any questions?" So my question was, "What are the kind of qualities that you look for in a successful candidate?" And they described the behavioral aspects of what exactly do they look for in a candidate that is to be hired at their organization. And it was quite a good interview, I would say. There were 3 or 4 moments where we had a good smile at each other, and I just felt that it went really smooth because I was aware about the technicalities of various stuff related to finance. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do you prepare for the technical round? Now, my suggestion is for people who are still studying, they should be having a vision in their mind about which particular field do they want to work in. I'm not saying that you need to specifically know the role that you are going to work at, because these roles keep evolving, they keep changing, and also it's not possible for 12th or 12th standard student or a degree college student to suddenly come up with a role that they want, but at least the field, so that you can study about it, and when the time comes you are able to answer technical round questions, because it's just not possible to prepare everything in a day or two. And for people who are really interested in finance, try to read news, because the questions would be based on current affairs. Try to know about different kinds of resources. Thoroughly prepare and research about the organization that you are going to give your interview at, and also the industry where the interview where you are giving an interview. Also, you need to be, I would say, you need to have an idea about related fields, so that you can defend your choice and you are able to uh, stay on the track. You don't get distracted, and I would say that they will test your patience, and they would try to get you off track, out of your comfort zone. So it's important that even if you are going deeper into concepts where it could get difficult for you, you are confident, and remember, you need to say that you don't know the answer to particular questions when such a question is asked, because they also want to know whether you are willing to accept the fact that you don't know everything, or are you going to lie, or you are going to take a punt by bluffing. So yes, that's it. I'll also be sharing the link to my resume, that will be in the description box. And also I've shared the HR round interview, as I spoke, HR round interview experience. I have also put that link in the description box. If you have any doubts, you want to discuss anything with me, then you can mention it in the comment section, or you can connect with me on social media. And yes, I guess that's it for this particular video. Thank you for joining, and thank you for giving me your time. all the best for your future interviews, and I hope you have a wonderful career ahead. Thank you.